Hello and welcome back, everyone, to our Gold Standard podcast. Today, we are joined by the amazing Jared Van. As always, I am Brandon Deswankowski, joined by my amazing co-host,
Kate Weimer.
And
Brianna Snyder.
So we are super excited to have you on today. Tell the viewers who you are. How'd you get here?
Hi, I'm Jared Van. I'm a behavior scientist. I am currently a PhD student at Penn State. I am in the special education track. I'm really interested in precision teaching, direct instruction, instructional design, and all sorts of other stuff like social justice. And yeah, I'm really interested in the science and I'm really happy that y'all asked me to come on out and talk to you.
Yeah.
We love it. One of the biggest questions that we kind of ask is like, how did you get started? And the common thread that we end up finding is, I fell into it. I just fell into the field. How did you find the field of ABA?
Well, I graduated from undergrad with a BA in psychology. And at the time, all you can do was be what was called a behavior therapist. So I got a job as a behavior therapist in the Bay Area. And I realized immediately that I loved it. I love working with kids. I got to hang out with them during class. And then when it came to recess, go out there and play basketball and dunk on them if they were being rude or mean. And then, kind of come back and work with them on whatever we were working on. I found quickly that I was pretty good at it and I enjoyed it. I heard that my friends were stuck in cubicles and kind of hating their life. So I was like, I think that I'm pretty good at this, but I could be better if I got more training and more education. So then I moved to LA when I got accepted into the Chicago School of Professional Psychology at the LA campus. And I got my master's there. And then I was getting my master's and this guy named Dr. Richard Cabina was coming to do a presentation on precision teaching, and I already had his books, and I was like, hey, I asked my supervisor, can I please go and do this this workshop? I know it's 3 days. I know we got a super difficult client, but I think it would be really helpful. And she was the best supervisor that I could ever have. And she was like, yeah, sure, go for it, learn, and then bring it back and teach us what you learned. It was like, perfect. Met him, and he's a super big nerd with like superheroes and stuff, and so am I. So we were cool about that, and he noticed that I was answering a lot of questions, and I knew stuff, and I had his book, and I was like, hey, can you sign it? And he signed it, and then I saw on IG, I found him, and I was like, hey, is there anywhere where I can go and get my PhD in like precision teaching? And he was like, oh, I'm a professor at Penn State, and you can try to apply here, and we can see if you get in, and if you do, I'll work with you and teach you more about precision teaching. So from a DM on IG, I'm now working on my PhD.
Love that. Love that.
Going back to the beginning of what you said when you took a job as a behavior technician, did you know what it was when you took that job?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
we had a background in ABA. I went to the University of the Pacific in Stockton, California, and we learned a lot about ABA, and I had a class where I had to change my own behavior. So I knew what it was. I knew what I needed to be doing, but, I got the typical training when I got there, and they were like, have you worked with kids? And I was like, yeah, I was a lifeguard and swim instructor, so I've worked with kids recently.
Yeah.
I was going to say, because when I initially took a job as a behavior tech, I was like,
No.
this pays pretty well. I'm going to take this job.
Right.
And then that's how it kind of blossomed from there. So at least you had a little bit of a background.
No, I didn't know what ABA was until I took a job in ABA because I majored in psychology, and it was like your intro to psych class. You get to Skinner, and it's like, and then behaviorism died, and we move into Freud the end. And it's like, what? They just forgot about the rest of it.
We no longer behave.
Yeah. That's it.
Everything's dead man's. So, I mean, precision teaching. Tell us and the viewers a little bit more about it.
First of all, the dead man's test that you kind of just talked about was actually created by the founder of precision teaching, Ogden Lindsley. He was B.F. Skinner's student. Actually, I have a sticker of B.F. Skinner right here. He was B.F. Skinner's student, and he really liked how B.F. Skinner did his measurement, which was the cumulative record. And he kind of wanted to mirror that. So him and his students worked on creating this weird little chart called Standard Celeration Chart. It's blue, and it's blue because they chose multiple colors, and then they measured which color was the ones that was most accurate and quickest. So it's like scientifically chosen to be blue because of what they found. And precision teaching is basically a system of measurement and behavior detection that works with any intervention, any teaching instruction, whatever. You just use their measurement practices to be able to determine if the behavior is changing fast enough or slow enough. And then you can also project the line to see how long it will take to get to the behavior to be at your criterion or mastery. And it's a much more precise way of behavior detection and measurement compared to what we typically see in ABA.
Right. Now, do you need to be at a master's level to understand something like this, or can it be taught to any kind of like behavior tech, RBT, clinical associate?
It could be taught to anybody. Actually, 6-year-olds teach other people how to do it once they learn, and they love it. And at Morningside Academy, all of the students there, they're like middle school aged students. They all use the precision teaching, standard acceleration, all that stuff, and they know how to do it, and they teach everybody that walks in as well, because it's really simple to learn if given the opportunity. It's just there are not a lot of precision teachers out there, and there are not a lot of people who know about it either.
Yeah.
I feel like some people are listening right now going, really, 6-year-olds?
Yeah. I mean, there's a study, or there's multiple studies where 6-year-olds chart their own behavior. They have one kid charting the amount of times he rocks back in his chair. They have one kid that she felt like she had too many selfish thoughts and feelings, so she counted her selfish thoughts and her selfish actions, and she got paid like 25 cents. This was back in like the 60s, 70s, for having a fewer number of selfish acts and thoughts. So, I mean, there are a lot of things that you can do with it.
Yeah.
I'd like to expand more on that. So bringing thoughts and feelings from from the inside and bringing it on the outside and graphing it.
Yeah.
And that's something that you do quite often.
Yes, that's actually what my dissertation is going to be on, working with this thing we call inner behavior. We all know we have these things called private events. And if you are a radical behaviorist, you believe that private events matter, they influence and affect our lives, and they are important. B.F. Skinner actually has a quote, and it's in the Cooper White book, that talks about these behaviors within the skin are important and significant and should be able to be measured and follow the same laws that outer behavior do. So what we found is you can tell, it's kind of hard to tell when a behavior ends or an inner thought or feeling or urge ends, but you can measure when they begin. So you can count the number of times you have positive and negative thoughts throughout your day, which a lot of people do on the Standard Celeration Chart. And then if you're having distress, you might find that you have more negative thoughts than positive thoughts. Well, they came up with this thing called the 1-minute timing, which came from academic studies like math and reading, where you count for 1 minute, or you have a 1-minute timer, and then you try to count as many positive thoughts and feelings as you can, like I'm awesome, great, fantastic, super smart, beautiful. And then you do that for 1 minute, and then you count how many you got that day. Maybe you got 17, and then you just the next day do the same thing, just try to beat your own score. And we found that when you do this 1-minute timing, oftentimes your positive thoughts and feelings will increase, and your negative thoughts and feelings will decrease throughout the whole day. So it's a way that we can actually measure and change the frequency of our thoughts and feelings using behavior science.
Right.
And that's just done through self-management and tracking your own behavior?
Yes. Yeah. You can, I mean, there are actually, I have 10 studies in my literature review right now that use it. There are more studies, but they didn't fall into my inclusion-exclusion criteria.
Does this fall under any kind of like ACT guidelines as well?
It could. I'm not the biggest person on ACT because I just don't feel like I have enough information about it. But I've worked with people who I've worked with them to learn precision teaching. Mm-hmm. They already have an ACT background, and they kind of merge the two, and they're able to come up with some really awesome stuff for their clients and their kids. There's somebody I'll shout out, Across Environments on Instagram. She actually does that. I actually did one webinar on ACT and precision teaching for inner behavior, and then she kind of goes off and does more of it, but I just kind of did the intro.
That's amazing.
It's very cool. I remember earlier in my behavior analytic career that I did implement ACT with a learner, and instead of just implementing ACT, I did use something very similar, only it was like a standardized test, so it had a bunch of pre-put together questions, and it rated the individual's ability to be flexible mentally. And then after implementing ACT for so many months, we reinstated this assessment and then compared their baseline scores to their, intervention scores. And it showed that the mental flexibility did actually increase. So it's a lot of what you're saying and blending the two together so that precision teaching along with ACT, and it, again, is able to bring those internal things and kind of drag them to the outside.
Absolutely. I mean, precision teaching, like I said, it works with any instructional method or teaching program. You just use it to detect behavior and to measure it across time. So, I mean, there's like 4 steps. It's pinpoint, which is what we do instead of operational definition. And then you have pinpoint, record, where you record the occurrence of the behavior. Then you go to change to see if you need to continue your intervention or if you need to stop and change because the intervention isn't going as quickly or as well as you want it to go. And then the last one is try again. We never give up on the learner. We always figure out another way. We have this thing called the learner is always right, which doesn't mean that the learner, everything they do is right or we like everything that they do. It means that the environment is selecting behavior for the behavior to engage in. So behavior is not emitted, it is permitted by the environment. Recognizing that, we see that, hey, if they're not learning, then I need to change my teaching strategy, my teaching style, my instructional methods, because then it's on me, not on them. I'm not going to blame the learner.
And I think that's also a big takeaway too, is we also have to remember our behavior when we're running any kind of these assessments or programs, because the learner might not be picking up on whatever the skill is that they're supposed to because of the way we're running it. Absolutely. So it could be as simple as a tone change. It could be as simple as the way we're standing, or, much more complex. But we also have to take into account, like, we matter in those situations, what we do, how we present it. Because, again, like, permitting them the opportunity versus just saying, all right, well, they're not getting it. I don't know what else to do.
Exactly.
Okay, change up what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we hear a lot of the times, maybe teachers will say, or anybody might say, hey, I reinforced their behavior, but it didn't change. And it's like, well, by definition, that's not reinforcement. So, you know what I mean?
Right.
And you don't want to sound arrogant, but you want to try to train them and teach them, hey, like, then that's not working. So we got to try something else, you know?
Or he should know how to do that. It's like,
Yeah.
well,
I hate
how do we
that.
know that?
You should just respect my authority.
Oh, yeah.
Because I said so. Right. The old way.
I know you had mentioned radical behaviorism and that it's somewhat newer and slowly but surely being like more accepted in terms of taking the internal, putting it on the external, graphing data when it comes to those internal emotions and thoughts. Do you ever get pushback on your work?
Oh, yeah, all the time. Because...
And how much do you love it?
Well, I love it because when I talk to people, I say, hey, I'm talking about behavior science. There's behavior science and there's behavior analysis. A lot of people don't recognize there was kind of a split in behavior science and behavior analysis around the time when Java came out, where they did like the 7 dimensions and everything. They kind of went away from Skinner's science in a few ways. One, they started using percent correct, and they started accepting and using more psychology stuff instead of saying, hey, we need to measure using frequency. We need to do this across like total time and all this stuff. So when I talk about the science, I'm referencing a lot of old papers and a lot of Skinner, and I'm like, you think you know more than Skinner? Like, I'm just like, is that what we're going here? That's one. And then 2, also, what I'm talking about in this inner behavior stuff, if it changes people's lives and they have an improved outcome and life quality, does that matter? Yes. Then 2, can we replicate the study to see if we have similar results across different organisms? And if so, that's how science expands. That's how all other science expands, because other sciences aren't contingent on inter-observer agreement. We're one of the few sciences that say we both have to have inter-observer agreement. If I consume something that makes me say, oh, the sky is purple, and then you consume the same thing and say the sky is purple, does that mean, since we have 100% inter-rater reliability, that the sky is purple and that we are scientifically correct? Or might the organisms that are currently on this substance be a little bit influenced by that, making incorrect or different decisions?
Right.
So.
And I like how you had mentioned how you navigate it. So you don't just combat it with emotion. You're coming at it with data and saying, like, let's do a comparative analysis then.
Exactly. We just need more studies. I mean, unfortunately, there are not a lot of studies on inner behavior or even on precision teaching.
Yet.
Because,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. Because, one, in the beginning, Jabba refused to publish the chart, which is interesting. Which is an interesting story because Ogden Lindsley's student sent in a chart in an article to publish, and they said that the chart is too difficult for the readers, which is kind of like saying our readers are too dumb to understand this, in my point of view. And then also what they did was like, oh, okay, well, you're going to say no? Well, we'll just take out ad space, and then we'll put the chart there. So that's how they did it in the first Jabba article. But still today, Jabba does not produce articles or will not publish articles with the full chart, saying that it takes up too much space. And it's like, we're digital. Like, I don't know how many people read articles on an actual piece of paper. You can do it, Jabba.
Yeah.
And it's so funny you say that because as you mentioned that it would be too difficult for readers to understand, I can hear my brother, he's going through grad school to become a behavior analyst in my head. The first text I get about grad school is, wow, acceleration charts really do suck.
Yeah. And I had the same experience because a lot of times they say, okay, well, you have to do SAF meds. So you'll have to, which is say all fast minute everyday shuffle, where it's basically flashcards, and you have to see the term.
Oh, we know what it is,
Yeah,
but
okay.
say it for the viewers.
Yeah.
Say it for the
so
viewers.
you see the term, you say the definition. So you're doing these SAF meds, and you have to chart your performance on the Standard Celeration Chart. You're hating your SAF meds. Yeah. You're concerned that you're going to have to do your SAF meds in front of your professor as you go. So you're pairing all of these aversive stimuli with the chart. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I hate this chart, and now you hate it because before you didn't know it, so it had no relation. But now all of these other aversive stimuli are paired with the chart. So now you hate the chart, and it's like, maybe this wasn't a good idea. But I had SAF meds, and one time I was really working hard, and I got like the most out of all campuses, the most correct in C term, say definition. And I'm not gonna lie, I may have stacked the deck. Well, I did get a plaque, but I may have stacked the deck because I watched how my she's not gonna see this. Hopefully, I watched how she shuffled.
We might have to cut this out, guys.
I watched how she shuffled, and I was like, well, if I stack it like this, then maybe I'll get all the good terms on top.
He's counting cards.
Yeah. So I got all the like 5 pointers on the top, and she's just like, dang, he really. I did know the words of the terms, but I may have.
You may have skewed the data.
Contriving the environment.
Exactly. So I still got that plaque.
Listen, you used behavior analysis to get it done. That's fair in my book,
right?
You just took the science and you used it to advantage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with it. And then also, while you're hating all the SAF meds, you could pretty much track your negative thoughts on the Standard Celeration Chart.
Exactly.
And then after you know it, you can go back and say, well, actually, it's not that bad.
Yep, do a few timings and then try to increase those positive responses and decrease those negative responses to the chart.
Yeah.
For everybody listening, I know this was prior to the podcast, but we got a small rundown before of an acceleration chart. And I feel like I learned more within that 3 minutes of you breaking it down than I did in grad school. So do you want to give a quick rundown? Yeah. And we'll put it up on the screen for everybody to see what you're talking about.
Perfect. I'm going to look at it while I talk about it.
Yeah, that's fine.
But it's called a Standard Celeration Chart. We say celeration because acceleration is an increase in whatever frequency you're talking about. Deceleration is a decrease. Just take off that D, take off that act, and you have celeration, which is change over time. So when you look at your Standard Celeration Chart, you see the 1. There's this really cool rhyme by Michael Mahoney. Big numbers that start with 1 tell us what to count by and what to count from. So you look at that 1, and then you can go from 1 and you go up to the next line, which is 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 10. And then once you get to 10, you start counting by 10s, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 to 100. Then once you get to 100, you count by hundreds, 100, 200, 300, 400. Everything in between, you kind of guesstimate. The thing that Ogden Lindsley said that's cool about the Standard Celeration Chart is that he really cared about big changes in behavior. The Standard Celeration Chart makes mouse look like a mouse, an elephant look like an elephant. So you'll actually see changes in behavior that are significant. For instance, let's say me and Beyonce. Let's say if I had 1,000 followers on Instagram, Beyonce got like 6 million followers. If I got 1 follower, that's a +1. I'm excited. I'm super excited. You know, that means something. Beyonce gets a +1. That's not a big change relative to where you started. The cool thing about the Standard Celeration Chart is it measures that relative change, whereas non-standard charts don't make that relative change measurement and don't make it detectable. So, like when you have a kid, their first steps, a baby's first steps, super big deal, everybody's excited. But the 100th step, you don't really care about. You know, can you tell the difference between a kid reading 20 words a minute to 40 words, which is ×2, or 100 to 120? I mean, it's relatively, it's not as big. So the cool thing about the Standard Celeration Chart is it tells those things. I feel like I was supposed to say something else as well, but yes, this. Also, the cool thing about the Standard Celeration Chart is that it can measure all on the same chart without changing the chart once per day to 1,000 per minute. So you can measure the full range of a person's or human's behavior on the chart, whether it's low frequency behavior or high frequency behavior. The highest frequency behavior, 1,000 per minute, there are only 2 behaviors that might get that high, which are drumming. And then also there was a tap dancer that might have been able to tap 1,000 per minute, might have been able to. But other than that, you can chart.
Drum 1,000 per minute.
There you go.
I've been doing it.
Challenge accepted.
Yep, we'll get him on the chart. But yeah, so you never have to change the chart for any behavior, anything. So you can really measure the changes in behavior across time and different environments where you don't have to change it all. And Ogden Lindsley did this, and he made this because he was training teachers, and he was frustrated with how long it took every teacher to say, this is my chart, what's happening on this axis, what's happening on this axis.
Yeah.
It's like, let's just standardize this whole thing.
It's almost like you were saying you gave personality to data.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, when you bring this up to other clinicians or behavior analysts, what's their standard response?
Fear, anxiety, anger.
Oh, this again.
Like war flashbacks of doing SAF meds. But, you know, what I do is I'm trying to teach people a little bit about why it's important and the standardization of measurement. I start off with talking about sessions and how terrible sessions are. If you see sessions running at the bottom of your chart when you're measuring behavior, you already got a big problem, because how long is a session? How many sessions occur in a week? I mean, there are so many times where you got to understand, if we are truly a science, we should be using standard measurements. Standard measurements of time: seconds, minutes, hours, days, months, weeks, years. Measure in that. If you want to truly be the hard science that we are, we need to measure in that. So then people can say, okay, that makes sense. We'll use days instead of sessions. Cool, got you there. Then you kind of move on to talk about all these other things. Like, I found that there might be 23 different ethical violations by using non-standard charts across different people and environments and all that stuff. So the BACB's own ethics guidelines are against using non-standard charts, but just nobody knows about it or talks about it. So I talk about that. I also talk about how it's more ethical because it measures students from where they started from, instead of just comparing like, hey, your student might have started super low, but they're not where they need to be. And it's like, well, they made great gains, and that matters. But your non-standard line graphs won't really detect that as well and as readily as a standard celeration chart. And then finally, what I've found through doing really extensive research is that pretty much one thing that we know is that all assessments are racially biased and biased against students and people with low socioeconomic status. And what they found is that the Standard Celeration Chart may be the first non-biased measurement tool in all of learning, because it measures students' learning curves, the rate of learning, instead of just measuring one dot. So instead of just saying, oh, they're here when they should be here, what we're measuring is not just one response or one opportunity, which is usually what is measured in assessments. We're measuring responses across time. So they get like 2 weeks to measure. And then we say, hey, if they really have a learning disability, the slope of their learning curve will be lower compared to somebody else, instead of just one data point, because maybe they had a bad day, maybe they didn't have enough to eat, all this other stuff, and maybe they just start from a lower area. So let's say like a typical student might be up here and a student might be down here, but they might have the same curve of learning. So they don't have a disability. What they just have is an environment that hasn't reached their behavior up to that higher level.
Yeah. And I feel like that's a much more thorough way of measuring. As a child of an IEP myself,
Same.
there were certain things that I was excluded from or over talked to about, where I was like, no, I totally get that. And they're like, oh, well, your tests don't say so. And I'm like, well, I don't perform on tests. You know, I can't even count how many times I had to say that as a child, like, I don't do good on tests. I can't. I freeze up. I lose all the information in my brain. I could tell you about it right now, but as soon as you put that paper in front of me, it's gone.
I had a similar upbringing because even when I graduated from 8th grade and moved to high school, I was put in at that time it was called remedial classes. And by the end of the school year, I had all A's, and they were like, why do you have all A's if you're in these classes? And I said, because I don't do well on standardized tests. Like, I know the work, but like you had said, I just freeze up. So for an entire year, I relearned things that I already knew. Yeah. Like you had said, if I had something like that where I could actually see my curve and just see like I'm not performing well on that day, I wouldn't have wasted my time.
Yeah.
There's another part that goes to that, because in schools, mastery is 100%. But that's a ceiling that limits the performance of the individual, because 100% doesn't tell how many times the behavior occurred. Also, it doesn't get them to mastery or fluency. When you do like SAFMEDs, or you do like those times tables or like those math charts, where you like, okay, well, if they got 100%, it doesn't tell you how many they got correct. If I answer one correct, that's 100%. Shaq at the free throw line makes one free throw shot. Is he a good free throw shooter? We don't know. So you need more. So when you measure in percent, you can't actually get to true mastery, which is fluency, the combination of accuracy plus speed, which characterizes competent performance. That's a SAFMED that I memorized.
I was going to say, that seemed like very memorized.
Yeah,
Sounds like the BDS modules, if you ask.
Exactly.
Yes. I'm having flashbacks of BDS modules in fluency right now.
Exactly. But what we've learned is that once a student gets to true mastery, when they get to that fluency, which is like beyond that 100% mark, you can get all these cool effects, which are areas, like I say, help students in all areas, which are A is, I'm blanking on it now, but there's also RESA. Basically, that you're able to retain information longer. You're able to do the behavior for a longer amount of time. Even if there are distractions in your environment, you can apply the behavior to similar problems. And then also you can have behavior adduction, where you apply same behavior, new environment, or even new behavior, new environment. Like, there's all these benefits to being able to be fluent. And when we see that competence, we know that confidence comes with competence. So students who are confident in their abilities are often competent because they know they can do it. Now, if you haven't been able to go beyond that 100% mark and reach true fluency, you're probably not feeling so confident. So you probably haven't been able to learn, and your environment hasn't raised the bar so that you can be able to get to that level.
Speaking of teaching students skills to make them confident, I know you had mentioned you use this a lot for them to track their own internal feelings.
What a segue.
With that being said, obviously that's not something that just comes naturally. How do you begin to teach them, let's say anger, for example? I'm feeling angry and this is what it looks like and feels like on the inside for me to track it on the outside.
That's a good question. And we have to understand that different students and different people are going to have different feelings. They're going to feel different things. So I start with asking them, like, what would anger be like to you? What is a situation where you might have felt angry recently? Can you think about it? And then they're going to think about it, and I'm like, okay, so let's write down some of those angry thoughts and feelings that you might have. Now let's work on some positive thoughts and feelings about yourself that are non-angry feelings, and then they might work on those positives. So then we say, okay, well, let's do this. Let's do a 1-minute timing where we count as many of those positives as possible. And then they go about their day, measure the angry times, measure the positive times. And then when we keep on doing those 1-minute timings, what we often see on the Standard Celeration Chart is those angry thoughts and feelings go down and those positive thoughts and feelings go up.
Right.
So we train them to detect the behavior. And one of the coolest things about this is they'll realize, anybody who does these inner behavior things, they'll realize certain triggers in their environment. Like, I didn't notice, but every time this student makes me angry, it's always them. And then they'll realize that. And it's like so cool because they're coming into contact and understanding the environmental contingencies that are controlling their behavior.
Right.
So it's like an unofficial ABC data collection
Yeah.
system too.
Yeah.
And
I
think it's so important. I did a professional development yesterday, and I feel like so many school districts get stuck on, well, he just needs a 1-to-1. They would do so much better if we just put a 1-to-1 next to them. And one of the case managers had actually said, well, we don't really have that option, so we're teaching him self-management skills instead. And I was like, yes, that's exactly what we need to be looking at. You're teaching them self-management because at 18, at 21, when that student graduates, there's no 1-to-1 coming with them. And if they don't have those self-management skills and they're able to understand, hey, this is what makes me angry, these are the positive thoughts I'm having, these are the negative thoughts I'm having, we're really just kind of setting them up for failure once they graduate.
That, and there are a lot of full functioning adults out there that don't know how to
Yes.
pinpoint what makes them angry in the environment. And I think the older you get, the window to learn that gets smaller and smaller, and the will to learn that gets smaller
I
and
would say
smaller.
the will too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're almost so secure with who you are as a person that to be able to point out, I'm doing something not wrong, but like now I have to fix my behavior. Like that's a really hard pill to swallow for somebody who's been doing this for 30 years, let's say. So to be able to teach kids how to do this from a very early age when their ego isn't as high, I think is such a beautiful thing, honestly.
I agree. There's a study for anger with a individual who is either in his mid-20s or early 30s, and he worked on anger, inner behavior. It's Kostowitz et al. 2000. And then there's one with the autistic 15-year-old girl, and she was working on despondent thoughts and feelings, and she had, trigger warning, suicidal ideation. And they even did like the Beck depression inventory before and after as well. And at first she was depressive, as according to the Beck, and then after she did this inner behavior study, then she no longer met the criteria for being depressed. And she said, I think this is the most important thing, is she no longer had the suicidal ideation after it all. So, and one of the things was they had to train her to detect the problematic thoughts and feelings, and then also do the positive ones. And then she decided, hey, I know we're not quite done or whatever, but I feel like I'm done, so I want to stop. And we love it when our researchers and our practitioners respect assent, and that's what they did, and they stopped. And what I found out while speaking to the author is that she ended up teaching her friends how to do the 1-minute timing because she was like, oh, you're feeling bad? Well, just do this real quick, and you'll feel better over time. So, yeah.
The behavior analyst in me has to ask, so that was the only change in that study was tracking her own behavior. No medication was involved, no
That's a
other
good question.
variables.
I'm trying to think of it. They didn't during the entire intervention. There was no, from what I read and what I'm thinking, I don't think there was any medication that was changed, and I don't think that
Just
there was
'cause I'm
any
sure
change.
everybody is wondering.
Yeah. I don't think there's no change in therapeutic settings.
Okay.
So the only change during the time of the intervention was the 1-minute timing. They started with baseline, so there was no intervention, because counting is not an intervention. One can try to make it an intervention, but what is found even by Cooper when he did his intervention, he found that counting didn't change the behavior enough or really at all. But when they did the 1 minute timing, that's when you'll see almost an immediate change. And then it doesn't usually change the acceleration, which is kind of over time. It usually changes the frequency, the level of the behavior.
Why do you think that is, that the 1 minute timing has so much to do with that behavior change rather than just taking frequency data?
Good question. I think I'm going to steal a phrase from Dr. Kimberly Barron's of Fit Learning. What does she say? She says, reinforced practice, repeated reinforced practice is what it is. So you're getting those reps in. Like any coach of athletics knows that, hey, if you want to be a good free throw shooter, you got to get a lot of free throw shots up. If you want to be a good kicker for, football, you got to practice that a lot. So what you're doing is you're giving yourself a lot of times to practice. One thing that I've noticed when people start doing their inner behaviors, trying to count positives, is it's really hard in the beginning to think of positive thoughts about yourself. But then I say, hey, go throughout your day, think about what other people tell you about you, think about what your grandma, what your mom, and even if you don't believe it now, use that in the 1 minute timing. Then start thinking about other things. And I show them some, if they need to, show them a list of these are all positive words that you can use. Okay? Look at it before we do it. Think of some ones that you think apply to you. And even if you don't, try to use them in your 1 minute timing. And eventually, they might not have felt it in the beginning, but over time they feel it. And I've even done the inner behavior thing on myself. And I started super low. I brought my iPad so I can show my chart of my thoughts and feelings. And they said that you want to try to get to, I was doing a clicker. So I got to 50 per minute. And that's like the frequency range, the aim that you want to get to. And when I got there, I started noticing a lot of different things in my environment. One, for whatever reason, I started playing basketball better. And the guys that I was playing basketball with were like, hey, we play on Sundays if you want to come through. And then also I had this person that was in my environment that was a student as I was a student, and they would say things that made me feel bad about myself. So at a conference one time, they tried to say something that would usually make me feel bad about myself, but at the time I was at 50 per minute, so it felt like she said it and then it just dropped, and it didn't hurt me at all. Like I had a shield protecting me. Yeah. So all these things that were in my environment that were previously causing these depressive, concerning, frustrating, negative thoughts and feelings no longer hit like they used to.
Yeah.
Brings the sticks and stones
Mm-hmm.
metaphor to life.
Kind of going back too, like you said it right before, is the competence of having that skill brought confidence.
Exactly.
So it doesn't just have to be necessarily in that learned skill. Maybe it just generalized to everything else in your life at that time. Like
exactly. I was like, I'm dope. I'm cool. I'm great. I'm fantastic. Yeah. Like there's too many of them that I got in my head for you to try to, put a chink in my armor or whatever.
Interestingly enough, you say that. Because I would say probably about a little over a year ago, I was definitely in a rut, in my head, no positive thoughts about myself. And one of our previous podcast guests, my fitness coach that I work with, he said to me one day, he's like, name 5 things that you like about yourself right now. And I couldn't do it. And I was like, wow, I didn't really think about that. So every day he's like, I want you to write at least 5 things. And now it's kind of just part of that routine. I'm not charting it, but now I might really rethink that. But it definitely really makes you think differently about yourself, and your perception and how you view the world is just so much different when you have, more positive thoughts going on, even though as some behavior analysts don't want to talk about the private events, but it definitely shows in anything that you're doing that you're just more confident and competent as you go through life.
And one really important thing you said, and jumping a little bit back, is what does that look like for you? Like when you're talking about anger or sadness, you're basically giving a topography for those private events. Mm-hmm. What does it look like for you? And what does it look like for me? I think that's so important because a lot of times those private events get discounted. Setting events get drastically discounted. Yeah. So, when a student shows up for school and they haven't eaten in a day, oh, well, they're just having a bad day. And actually,
he already had a
Kate
snack.
has a really good analogy, the soda can one.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to.
Yeah, and I don't want to drag everybody through the mud and re-explain it, but it's essentially like on PD days and professional development, I like to tell teachers to like not take things personally. So I'll either use a fruit, like an apple or something, or a soda can, and I'll have two of them, and one of them kind of gets beat up throughout the morning, like doesn't wake up for school in time, misses the bus, doesn't eat a good breakfast, and the other one has everything laid out for them and has a great morning. And then they get to school and you're like, you didn't hang up your backpack. Go hang up your backpack. And then of course, you either open this soda can that's had a rough morning, or you cut open that apple and it's bruised, or the soda or whatever explodes all over you. That's just because like there were so many events that had happened that led up to that. This student wasn't set up for success like this one was, and you can't take that personally because it had nothing to do with you. Yeah. So that's essentially what that looks like.
I was taught the same exact thing, and it helped me a lot when I was working with the clientele I worked with.
And this work is like super powerful. I just want you to know that. I don't know if people tell you that all the time, but like definitely thinking a lot about what you're saying and like even applying it to yourself. I think that from a behavior analytics standpoint, it's pinpointing, right? Like you had said from the very beginning, you're shedding light on a behavior that you're looking to change, and then you're giving yourself multiple opportunities to practice it. Practice makes perfect, right? So if those opportunities aren't there, we can't get better at something. So why would you have that in your arsenal or in your repertoire if you don't make yourself do it? Like anything else, like you said, free throws or I don't know, meditation. Like if you're not applying that all the time, you can't get better at it.
Exactly.
And I think sometimes we forget, or many times we forget that as behavior analysts, we're almost not aware of our own behavior. And those self-management strategies, we've talked about it before, especially newer BCBAs, they're not taught self-management strategies in school. You're taught to pass that big exam that doesn't even have standard celebration charts on it anymore. And then that's it. Then you're off in the world, and hopefully you had a good supervisor, but if not, you're on your own.
Yeah. And speaking of that, just because we always like to shine light on the successes, but we also like to talk about the pitfalls. So give us a few on your way here.
On my way here.
Because like this, you came very, very far.
Oh yeah. A lot of my pitfall, like I failed often and a lot. Like I was really bad in school, but not bad like got into trouble, but bad like I had bad grades when I went from elementary to middle school. I just like got bad grades. They put me in the resource room, was what they called it, and they said that I had dyslexia. And I've worked on my literacy, and I don't have dyslexia, or I don't present with the same problems that what is called dyslexia would have, but I didn't get the training and learning that was required to be able to decode, to be able to do phonics or phonological awareness. So that's really what I needed to build up in frequency and improve. And I had the same with math. I was really terrible with math because I wasn't able to quickly be able to rattle off those numbers. But when trained in the right way, I'm able to improve those. So that's one, which I think is also why I'm like in the field of education and special education. Because I want to like heal myself, and I see every kid in myself. Yeah. So,
and that also plays on that confidence piece that you were speaking about before. Because thinking about myself as a kid, and I'm sure you guys had similar experiences, when you're told all the time that you're not good at something and you need to get pulled out of class to go somewhere else, and everybody's watching you go, it doesn't feel good.
No.
You know what I mean? And it doesn't give you the confidence to want to continue to practice that skill because you already feel like you suck at something. So as a kid, like that doesn't feel good, and it doesn't give you the building blocks to grow.
No. And when I was just starting out as it was called a behavior therapist. I know we're not therapists, which also Ogden Lindsley came up with the term behavior therapist. But when I was a behavior therapist in the Bay Area, before I got any master's level training, I had a student who had a high level of biting, hitting, kicking, spitting, all those kinds of behavior. I don't want to say aggression because all of a sudden the kid has a lot of aggression and the kid becomes aggressive, and then that kid is an aggressive kid, and you see how that kind of line goes. So he had a high level, a high frequency of those behaviors. One day, the teacher said something to him, and I had already told the teacher, don't talk to him, talk to me. And he turned around and spit on the teacher, and the teacher was a gen ed teacher, didn't know how to handle it, had never been spit on. So he was like, get out of here, you gotta leave. So my kid became into distress. He ran, he ended up biting another kid that was just walking through the halls, and I made sure everybody was good. I was able to, feed the bite, separate them. The other kid was bleeding. I sent them off to the office, did the whole thing. The assistant principal wanted to suspend my kid and said that the other kid's parents need to see that there was a punishment and your kid needs to be punished. Exactly. And I was like, my student does not like to come to school. If you punish them or quote unquote punish them, if you suspend them for biting, they will learn that if I bite, I get to leave school. Yes. Like I looked this student in the eye, like, do you understand that I'm 22, fresh faced, trying to explain it to this guy who's probably in his 40s. He's like, this kid doesn't know anything. So I tried to have my supervisor come, and she tried to explain it, and she was unsuccessful. So my kid got suspended, and I was so in my head for like 2-3 days, like even working with him at home, just like I feel like I failed my kid. Like I feel like a failure. Luckily, I was able to try again and work with them, control the environment a little bit better. That teacher knew, hey, if you want something, talk to me. Yeah. And then I was able to kind of learn how to handle those situations a little bit better blocking, got some master's level work. But I mean, learning that kind of stuff really helped me with the other kids that I would work with who had high levels of hitting, biting, kicking when it comes to arranging and contriving the environment. Yeah. Because when you're working with students or kids or anybody with those high level behaviors, you have to make sure that you're always ready for anything at all times. Yeah. So you have to have that contrived environment.
And I think that's huge, because you're not just like thinking about contriving the environment, you're changing the perception for those teachers, for those staff, because especially the kid that doesn't want to come to school, he's cool getting suspended. And at the same time, those students are told, hey, you're not good enough. You shouldn't be here. You don't belong here. I would say an adjacent experience. One of my first students that I worked with, he had some high frequency behaviors. He finally got a chance to earn basketball, and we got kicked out of the gym because the gym teacher came up to me. She goes, well, he's going to destroy my room. He shouldn't be in here. And said it right to his face. And you know what? He sure did. Because why? At that point, he had nothing to lose.
You just feel so undone as a person.
Yes.
When things like that happen. And it's like,
yeah. And at the time, I was probably like, I don't know, fresh. It was my first year working in a school. I didn't know what to do. My supervisor took it from there. And I think we came up with an alternate plan. We were not welcome in the gym, but we figured it out. But it's almost, we have to be those advocates too. We're not just behavior therapists. We're those advocates for those students, because not everyone understands that, hey, they might not be set up for success yet. And it's our job to teach them how to be successful, how to go out in the world and be those independent people and, have a purpose.
Absolutely.
And it's hard when you're fresh-faced. Again, I feel like this is like a continuing mantra here, but it's the confidence piece. You don't gain that right away. And if you did, you'd have the confidence to say no. You know what I mean? Like, I have no problem saying no now. Yeah.
Right.
But like, then you don't know that you can say that or do that. You're like, I'm going to lose my job. And now I'm like, shit, if I lose my job, I don't care. I'm doing the right thing. I'm basing it on my ethics. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to let exactly that, and I'm not going to let you run amok on the student that I work with. Yeah. Because you're not treating them fairly now. Exactly. So
and in those situations, failure is the absolute best teacher, because you can't know what you don't. It takes practice to get good at what we do. It doesn't get picked up overnight. We can't just know someone else's behavior just from a few sessions with them, a few days in school. It takes time, it takes practice to understand and be competent. Absolutely. To then walk through those hallways and have that confident piece to you. One of my first years in school, I had a student who had 164 behaviors a day. The second I walked into class, the teacher was just like, well, I hope you can help, because if not, he's out of here. First impression right off the bat.
Out loud in front of the kid?
Out loud in front of the student. That's and so it was no surprise, because every time he would have a meltdown and start ripping up papers and flipping his desk, the whole class, oh, he's doing it again. Everyone clear the classroom. I was like, he knows. Yeah. He knows.
All of our students have ears. Thank you.
It's also like extremely disrespectful. Like, if you just take us as like 4 adults in the room, right? So like, if let's say you were doing something that I didn't like, and I looked at Brianna and I was like, can you believe he's doing this again?
Right.
Brianna would be like, what are you doing? Like, how disrespectful. If you have
Right.
something to say, like, you either talk to the person or figure out something that you can do within the environment to change that behavior. Like, you would never talk like that about somebody in front of them if they weren't a child. So, like, what gives you the right to do that as an
Yeah.
adult? I just think they lose respect at some point, or the
Yeah.
dignity of the client.
And I think that was the first year that I learned working with the teachers as much as the student is equally as important because, moral of the story, end of the year, he won Student of the Year and got to walk on stage in front of the whole school and accept that award. And I was just like, yeah. But it really, it goes full circle. Understanding and being competent with their behaviors as much as it is the teacher's behavior. Understanding certain triggers.
Absolutely, and I think that we also have to think that the teachers are also responding to their environment, so they probably learned the same thing and seen it from other people. So we have to also sometimes train the teachers, train the aides, train the parents as well, because a lot of times what's out there and what's learned is not exactly the best way to help the learner, the student, the kid. And we have to be like, hey, we got to have a little bit of a behavioral kindness, or you know what I mean, this and that. And then that helps, hopefully, the teacher's responsive, and they'll be like, oh, wow, this is working much better than whatever was happening before.
Yeah.
That and the fact that, like, kids are sponges, man. They absorb everything. Even when you don't think they're listening, they're taking it all in. And whether you think so or not, like, these things get carried on for the rest of their lives. So, like, sometimes, like, you may be thinking you're just making, like, this comment. Sometimes they're passive aggressive. Like, they could carry that on for a really, really long time.
And I've noticed some of the best behavior scientists, I'll say, or behavior analysts, really are cognizant of their behavior so often when they're around kids, around other people, and they're continuously thinking about how their behavior shapes the environment and the consequences to that behavior.
Yeah.
So, kind of going back again, pushback that you get. Aside from this, what are some other topics that you feel very passionate about, but you just feel like you just keep meeting the same resistance?
One of them, I made a post recently talking about how United Healthcare is denying services, ABA services, to children with autism or whomever want it or need it. And a lot of the comments were like, oh, my kid gets, their ABA services and it's so great and all this stuff. But there is a lot of anti-ABA rhetoric, thoughts, feelings out there. I did not know. Well, I feel like I did, but in my comment section, they got hitters, and they were saying this, and I was trying to meet them with the science, and I was just like, in this story, this kid and their parents wanted the services. So if you don't agree with them, okay, that's one thing, but these people wanted it, and it was effective for them. Then there's the fact that, ABA therapy is shock therapy, and I'm like, oh my God, electrocontingent shock is not happening almost anywhere. There's like one or two places where it's occurring, and that place, I don't agree with it at all for even that is happening, but the behavior is so intense that you have kids like popping out their eyeballs, and you're trying to figure out ways to stop it. So that's what's happening over there, and they're trying to figure out how to stop that. I still don't agree with electrocontingent shock because I read this one thing, I'm not going to go into it, but it can cause ulcers and internal body concerns that further harm the individual or organism. But people think that it's only that and gay conversion therapy, or it's compliance based only, and it's like, you probably don't know the contemporary today ABA, and you might just need some education, but they're resistant to it. Yeah. So that's one of a few reasons why I'm kind of slowly slipping out of behavior analysis and more into education, special education, just because it's like, why would I I don't really want to fight that battle when I also feel like sometimes in the ABA circle, they're like, nobody likes that chart. Nobody can use that chart. So it's like, okay, I'm trying to fight for y'all, but at the same time, y'all don't even want to learn about this thing. So it's like, that's, I think, one of the pitfalls I have is like trying to figure out sometimes where I fit. So I'll say I'm a behavior scientist and call myself a behavior scientist, because while I do hold a BCBA, if I ever choose no longer to collect CEUs, use and pay the fees to remain a BCBA, I will always be a behavior scientist, and nobody can take it from me now that I learned the science.
There you go.
It's really sad that like sometimes it just takes a person to read the first initial thing they read about ABA or like hear the first negative thing and now all of a sudden like everything in ABA is bad.
Right.
And if you see harm or abuse, report it.
Right.
As you should.
Mandated report.
Yeah, we are mandated report. I've had to mandate report twice in some really tough situations, and just that call being on the phone with like CPS is so sad. And also, like I realized then that those people on the other side of the phone must get those calls all day, so I felt like they were super callous, and I was trying to like help this kid, and I felt like they had been abused at home, at their group home, and I was like making the call, and they were like callous and like almost blaming me, and I'm like, I don't even see the kid at home. I'm at the school. I'm a mandated reporter. I'm doing my job, but like.
It's almost like punishing for you as the reporter.
There definitely can be more supports. There could be more supports for anybody and everything. But yes, definitely. If you see something, say something, make the call. You have to do that due diligence and report exactly what's going on. We are mandated reporters, so it's better to over-document than under-document.
Exactly. And so that's one of the things that I kind of struggle with is like where I fit, because when I grew up, I heard like people say, you got to specialize. You got to kind of find your niche. And I'm like, well, I like a lot of things. If you look at my content, exactly. Like today I made a video about the science of reading and like the 5 pillars of reading, and then all this stuff about reading specifically. Yesterday, I was talking about what Trump said and how it was racist. And then the day before, like I'm just talking about things that interest me, but like it's all about behavior, the activity of living organisms. That's another SAF med. Sorry.
They never go away.
No.
But again, I think it's so important that you take that lead and you allow people to see that, whether it's they disagree with it or they agree. It's important that you're standing on your principles, because there's so many, analysts or scientists in the field that they shy away. As soon as someone disagrees with their opinion or their studies, they're like, oh, you know what? I threw it away. It doesn't matter. I actually don't like acceleration charts anymore. Like, no thanks. So the fact that you're standing up for what you believe and you're backing it up with the science, you're standing on your principles, there's nothing more important in the world than doing that and with an open heart.
I feel like I'm going to make a hard pivot. Are you wearing an Oura ring?
Yes, I am.
I saw that and I wanted to ask.
I want
on
one
that.
in the worst way.
Yeah.
The entire time I'm like, don't ask. But I have to.
I
Because
was
it's
gonna
like
wait
all
till after.
data driven, and I don't know anybody that has one, so I feel like I want somebody's opinion who has it. So tell me about it, and do you like it?
One, I like it. It took me a while to learn how to like wear a ring, because I just never wore a ring, so it felt really weird, and you wear it when you sleep. The biggest thing I think is the sleep data, because I also have my Apple Watch, which has my activity tracking. But the sleep data is what's really insane, because I've always had a terrible time sleeping. Like I've always hated sleep because I'm not good at it. I learned.
If I've ever heard somebody say that before.
You practice it.
Clearly not well. Going to bed late and waking up early. Always been an early bird, and after you work I would get to a school at like 7 and then end at like 6:30. So I am cooked. But I just want to do my thing or whatever. So
Decompress.
Exactly. Oura Ring, one of the cool things is the sleep tracking. So it determines or gives you a score to talk about the quality of sleep. And one of the things that I learned is that if you eat something before or during, like right before you sleep, it will negatively impact your sleeping. I didn't know that.
Did it give you a time frame?
It did. I don't remember it because I don't.
I didn't know if you had like a hard fast rule, like I gotta stop eating.
No. I just know now, just like, hey, you're gonna go to bed in a few hours. Stop eating. But like it said, have you been eating before you go to sleep?
It called you out.
Yeah, I got snacks by the bed. So it detected that, and then I was like, yeah. So I learned to not eat before I sleep, and I had slept a lot better because of it. I wake up and I look at my sleep score. When I was sick, my sleep score was super low. When I do well and when I work out and then I go to bed, my sleep score is really good. And I can detect, I found my range of sleep score, my girlfriend's sleep score, so much better than mine. She sleeps so much better, so much
She's a
longer.
pro.
Yeah, exactly. But
She's competent.
yeah, exactly.
Lots of practice.
That's what I think that for me, that's one of the biggest things about the Oura Ring. I highly recommend it if you're interested in data collection of your own physical behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We definitely are.
I am. The only reason why I was deterred of getting one is because is it uncomfortable when you lift?
I take it off when I lift.
Oh, you do?
Because
Okay.
I have my my Apple Watch and
Okay.
I set that because like if I got the barbell,
That's why.
like,
That's
I'm
why
already
I was like, I'm gonna
nah.
pinch my finger.
Yeah, exactly. So I just take it off. I put it on the charger. You don't need a charger for like days, for like 7
I
days
would hope
dang
not.
near. But I always just put it off, put it on the charger when I go work out, come back and put it on, and it'll like my phone
But
will
it still
let me
charges
know.
your lantern powers?
Yes. In brightest day and blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. For those who worship evils might be where my power Green Lantern's light.
That's
Now,
the
quick-
most impressive
Yeah.
thing you said the entire
There we go.
time.
Now, quick question.
Clearly you're a
Marvel
DC
or DC?
guy.
Marvel or DC?
I don't know.
Milestone. So Milestone was like Static Shock. I don't know if y'all remember Static. But I would probably say my favorite is this is hard. Probably say Marvel right now because I actually read.
I don't think we
comics.
can be friends anymore.
Well, I actually read comics, but Milestone has my favorite who like were bought out by DC Comics, but they don't publish as often. But the only reason why I say Marvel right now is because their comics, I'm reading like 7 or 8 different comics from Marvel, whereas DC I'm probably reading 5. Comic book day is always Wednesday, so big nerd once again. So I'm always
Comic
reading that.
book day is Wednesday.
Yeah,
Well,
it is.
honestly, you might sway back when Jason Momoa becomes Lobo.
Exactly.
I've been seeing that.
So I mean, it's contingent on who's producing the best stuff at the time.
But then it when Doctor Doom comes out as
Yeah.
RDJ.
But like my favorite superhero and powers are the Flash. Like on my Hydro Flask, there's a Standard Celeration Chart, and then there's a Flash symbol because he's my favorite set of
I was
powers.
actually going to ask, like, does the suit also fit in there too?
Oh yeah. But I gotta press the button. I don't want to press the button. But Dr. Kabina and I were both at New York Comic Con last year. We both dressed up as Green Lanterns. Day before, I was Static Shock, and I also have a Miles Morales costume that I would wear on Halloween when I went to school with the kids, and I would just be Miles Morales. That was the time when I was like growing out my fro, and I have the shoes that my little brother got me that were the actual Miles Morales Jordan 1s. So yeah, big nerd.
It pays off as a fellow nerd when you can throw that at the kids and they're like, you know who that is? I'm like, dude, I knew before you. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, actually, I had a problem with my kid because this teacher had this unassigned time where he's like 10 minutes in the beginning of the day. Everybody just shut up, don't say anything, and read something or do something. But he didn't give them anything. So I looked at all my comics. I brought like a big box of comics that were appropriate for their age, brought it into class, and I said, y'all can read the comics, but you can't take them home during this time. Really only did it because my student was being a problem. But, other students, and also comic books are, I call them a gateway book to like longer novels. So.
To find a love of reading. Because I would say growing up, I hated reading.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
And I feel like now as an adult, that just meant I never found something that I really enjoyed. So
Yeah, it sparked your interest.
yeah,
And when
exactly.
reading is tough, you're not going to enjoy it.
Right, and that was part of the problem
Because
too.
when it's
It
more
was aversive.
punishing and aversive, then
Exactly.
you're less likely to engage in that behavior. When it's time to read, you're always going to be the one like,
Exactly.
can I just look at the book instead?
Exactly. And it's hard to, when I was at Morningside Academy doing the Teachers Academy, they were talking about how to work with kids to like love reading. And one of the things that they said is you need to have a verbal community with reading that reads the similar stuff. So like, if you're a Harry Potter fan and you're reading Harry Potter alone, that might be cool. But if you can go on messaging boards or you can talk to somebody that also reads it, then it reinforces that behavior. So you need to come into contact with not only the reinforcement from being able to read it directed appropriately and correctly, but also with the social reinforcement to be able to talk about these things. Same thing with sports. Like you watch like a football game, maybe the Super Bowl, and then you'd be able to talk about it with somebody else. If you just was so insular and it's only you, it might not be as reinforcing.
It's communication skills too.
Yeah.
I like that.
I remember a few years back at one of the schools that I was at, I got called for a crisis call. There was a kid destroying the music room. Saw that he had a Dragon Ball Z shirt on. So before anything, there's teachers surrounding him. He's feeling like a caged animal all the way in the back. He's like ready to throw, I think he had a music stand. And I just, from across the room, I was like, Goku or Vegeta? And he was like,
Stimulus change.
I was just going to say, it's almost like when you throw them off
Vegeta,
guard. You know what I mean?
but why? And I was like, because Vegeta's my favorite. Immediately he drops it. He's like, yeah, but Piccolo's kind of cool too. And immediately we just started riffing back and forth. And I was like, yeah, man, but you can't forget Trunks. And just started throwing out all these things. And immediately the whole room, just the environment calmed down. And it was just that small gateway of just like, here's an olive branch.
Yeah, I had the similar conversation with the student who just left the class. It wasn't even my student, but I knew he was super into anime. And he's like, I hate my teacher. I hate him. And I'm like, well, look, you can be frustrated with him, and he's like, why can't you be the teacher? And I'm like, well, he's like Aruka Sensei.
Because I fight crime in my
Exactly. I was like, he's like Aruka Sensei, and I'm like Kakashi Sensei. Now, you still got to listen to Aruka Sensei, but you can still hang out with the Kakashi Sensei. So I hit him with the Naruto slang, and he was like, okay, that makes sense. So he came back to class, and just, being able to do that. And he's like, you got to read this or watch this. And he said I had to watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. So I watched it, and I was able to talk with him about it. So it was another kind of thing of being able to connect with their students. Yeah.
I definitely think that's a unique social skill, is being able to level with your learner and speak their language, and you gain that respect so much more quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
Circling back to Kate's brother, I'm thankful that he worked with one of our students last summer, because this kid, he was having such a tough time, and it came to be that he just needed someone to talk about Minecraft with. And
Why does this not surprise me?
oh my gosh, I thank Tim every single day, because he was able to talk Minecraft, relate it, and then this kid was finally able to identify even just his feelings and tie it to Minecraft, and it was so eye-opening for him. And then he was able to build a community. He was in a class with other kids who liked Minecraft, and guess what? He had a great summer, and now he was able to. We're no longer with him. He's able to, be in class independently because he learned those skills. And something so simple that's just like meeting kids where they're at, playing to their interests at first. Eventually we'll get there. But does it matter right now if he's not doing anything?
Exactly. Building rapport has to come first. Then you can be able to kind of give directives later on.
Yeah. I know in grad school they call it a behavior trap, but you take the likes and the preferences and you just embed them, even down to worksheets. Make those word problems anime related.
Exactly.
Make them related to Dragon Ball Z. Just switch a few words around, and then kids will be like, oh my, they're talking about Goku in this one. You know what I mean? And then they'll be more willing to complete it.
Yep. I was able to get a token board. This kid liked Pokemon. So I got a token board with different Pokemon badges. And then after he got tired of that one, I was like, okay, let's go to the next region. Now we're in the Johto region. So you got to earn these badges. So
It evolved.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was really fun. And you got to kind of bring that to it. And sometimes you got to learn about something that you have no idea or interest about, but it will really help your client if you do.
Really cool story talking about token boards. I was overlapping with one of my BCBAs in district, and he had a token board that I've never seen before. So he took the same concept, a character that the student really liked, and instead of being tokens on a horizontal board, he made them into a puzzle. So then it was a guessing game of what character, guess my Pokemon, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. And you put them together, and then it was also interactive. So that was the first time I saw that.
That's
and it was
really
super
cool.
cool.
So creative.
Right?
Yeah.
Tricks of the trade here. Teachers pay teachers. Click.
Right.
Sometimes that few dollars is worth it when
Yeah,
teachers pay
Yeah.
teachers.
And that's also the beautiful piece about the science in general, is being able to be so various in everything that we do, but have it still be effective. So my science doesn't have to be the exact same science as yours, but are we meeting the same goal?
Exactly.
And are we doing it in a safe and positive, approachable way? Because we talked about meeting kids where they're at. I think where we lose a lot of the respect in the science is from it doesn't even take that many, but from 1 or 2 clinicians that are going to push the kid, where you know that they've already had the tough day, you know that they didn't get to eat breakfast or they didn't get to watch their favorite show, and now we're going to put them in a class and be like, no, you're going to do this worksheet. But why? Because I said so. You're going to do this worksheet right here. You need to finish it right. And now I'm going to stand over your shoulder and I'm going to give you demands. All right, you finished 1, now do 2. Come on.
Yeah.
What is the point? Exactly. What do we get as grown adults by that forceful negative manner?
Exactly.
And I just had this discussion too with a lot of my staff because I had come into overlap and we just got a new student. Home life's a little rough. So we know that when she comes in and she's a little tired, that she's going to be less likely to complete a lot of the academic demands that we know that she's capable of. So they had that question of like, how much do you want us to push? How much do you? And I said, listen, if she's coming in and she's not ready for behavior intervention because her internal needs are not being met, she's tired, she didn't eat, whatever it may be, why are we pushing somebody when we know they're not going to be successful just because we need this work done? Well, guess what? She's not going to do it anyway because she's going to scream and cry and possibly have a tantrum because she's not ready for it. So let's reduce the response effort or the amount that needs to be done. Let's meet her with compassion. And then we'll get back to it tomorrow when she comes and it's a little bit of a better and easier transition.
That's like something that I find, especially for gen ed teachers, is so easy to use. Is just like I'll give them, I'll customize it, but just a sheet so students can fill it out. Did you eat? Did you sleep? What happened at home this morning? 3 questions, and then we know what to expect from their day. If there's an adult that has time to talk about it, or maybe that if they, have guidance or something like that, they can go down to the guidance counselor. Maybe it's something bigger that we need to look at. But I found that that's helpful, especially for students who are able to verbally communicate that it's just so simple. It's 5 minutes in the morning, not even 5 minutes, just a quick check-in, and then where your quote unquote baseline is for the day.
I love that. Sounds a lot like check-in, check-out procedures. I've read a little bit about that, and they can be very effective when used correctly.
Right. You know what's wild? I attended a gym class not too long ago, and they actually do that every day. So as you came in as a participant, you rated like 3 things on the board of like, I had a great night's sleep, I ate before I came, and I want to be pushed today. It was like a 1, 2, 3 thing.
Cool.
So then when the trainer came in, they could look and see like, this person wants to be pushed today. I'll ride them a little bit harder. This person didn't eat or had a shitty night's sleep, so maybe I'll lay off the gas a little bit. But like, I thought that was awesome because like, I've been to gym classes where I don't get pushed and I'm pissed, you know what I mean? Or there's been other days where I am at my wit's end today, and like if you say the wrong thing to me, I'm gonna turn around and I'm gonna bite your head off. So giving them that same opportunity to know where you're at, I think is so important. So it works for adults too, everybody.
Can all be tried. Jumping a little bit, you do so much. You're working on a dissertation. You're balancing school and work and a home life. What are your reinforcers? What gets you through the day?
Good question. YouTube, TikTok.
Mindless activities where you just turn off.
So I wonder too, like, are those as enjoyable because you do frequently post as well? Do you still find it as enjoyable?
I do. I'm a lot more cognizant about how I interact online when it comes to like anything that I might slightly like, I like immediately because I understand how much effort it takes to make content. That's one. And then how I comment on people's posts, how I share people's posts, because I know it's like people worked really hard to make it, so they wanted to get out there. And I've built a platform now where I have more followers, so I definitely want to put on more people, more behavior analysts that are really doing great work and say that, hey, now that I have this platform, let me put you on, or I've gotten the opportunity from other people to do that. So I'm more cognizant about that. Play basketball, work out, play with the dog, hang out with the girlfriend. All those things I really enjoy doing, play video games every now and then, although I just cannot play video games as long as I used to when I was younger. Used to be able to do it all night. Now I'm like, that was a cool hour, So all those things, I try to get them in as much. And I love to read, and I wish I had more time to read and I could read more stuff because now I really enjoy doing it. And also, for me, when it comes to my making content online, I need to read. Like if I haven't posted in a while, it's probably because I'm not reading. And then I'll read or I'll see something and I'm like, I didn't know that. Other people should know that content. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And some of my favorite too is like the beginning of your videos, you're so jazzed and you already have the article printed out, like ready to just like, hey, listen, this is what it is. And I just like, I know as soon as I watched one of those videos, I was like, oh shit, he's going to go in.
Literally, where is it? He brought us an article, so we're not lying.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of times it can be really difficult for people to really engage in the science when it comes to like if you're no longer in school, especially it's kind of hard to like find time to still read and all that stuff. So sometimes, like one time I said, I read this so you don't have to, you know what I mean? Because I understand people's aversion with reading, because I had it too. But also like there's a lot of stuff that's important that we should like share. And I hate going to a conference and then someone's like, so these are the results. And these
I've
are
never attended a talk like that.
And it's like, bro, I want to come out on a Spider-Man, you know what I mean? Web, flip, lights, cameras. Look at this chart, you know what I mean? Like, that's so interesting to me when they have videos, visuals, and stuff. Like, I remember Andrew Bulla was working with wolves. Dr. Andrew Bulla was working with wolves and showing that you can like detect a scent in wolves and then teaching them to match to sample. And I was like, this is dope. You know what I mean? And he's super animated when he talks. So I like kind of stole some of his like mannerisms or ways that he engages with the audience or the students so that I can become more engaging, because I just hate those super boring and dry stuff. And unfortunately, that's what you're taught, especially as a master's student. Like, this is how you're supposed to do it. This is how you have to share a graph and how you're supposed to blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, bro, like that's so boring. Like, so, you know, we got to level it up.
Yeah.
Again, putting personality to the data. That's what we need.
Exactly.
So with that, do you have any upcoming talks?
Yes. I'll be at ABAI talking about the chart.
We'll meet again.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, awesome. I can't wait to see y'all. I'll be talking about the chart. That's the one talk. There's a conference called the Standard Celeration Society conference that happens every year. This time it's in
I wonder what that's about.
Savannah. Yeah, it's about precision teaching and Standard Celeration Charts. It's in Savannah, Georgia. If I can send you guys the information, I will. It's always in November. And I go to that conference every year. I've been presenting every year. This year I'm going to present on my inner behavior research and a lot of the stuff I've talked about. And
All the nice things you say about your girlfriend, right?
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And one of the things that I'm really interested in getting into is dose. And like dose is like how do we deliver our intervention, how much of it, how long, how many times per week, like all of these things matter, but I don't feel like in behavior analysis, we really measure it accurately to determine what dose prescription should we be prescribing our clients. So when it comes to these interventions, like the one that I shared over there, there's only 9 or 7 days of 1 minute timings. That sounds like a very small dose of an intervention compared to what somebody else might need, like 4 or 5 weeks. What is the dosage? Right. So I'm going to be talking about that with the inner behavior research as well to determine what dose prescriptions should we be providing individuals. And then we should also talk about it across different interventions, like how long should this intervention take of a task analysis to load the dishwasher. You know what I mean? Because if you're taking 10 weeks to do the dishwasher or dishes, maybe something's going wrong.
Right.
But they completed it with 100% accuracy.
Yeah. And then also the percent accuracy, like some people are like, oh, 80% is cool. It's okay, well, if you're crossing the street, 80% is not okay. Because
that's at least one leg missing.
Exactly. So, I mean, percentages, just don't turn it into percent. Keep it the count per time.
Yeah. Kind of going along with the conferences talk, we had a guest a couple episodes ago that talked about like the transition in fun conferences. Mm-hmm. So conferences used to be a little bit more, and now I believe she described it as like it's a party when you walk in. Like you see all these people that you met at like another conference or you see online. Everyone's like hugging and high fiving, and then when it comes time you're actually learning about things that are of interest to you, but it's a community now that's a little bit more excited about learning those things versus like, we have a graph right here. Take a look.
You'll still see it though. It's getting
And you'll
less
walk
and
in
less.
and sit down and be like, oh, I picked the wrong talk.
But do you notice a change in some of the conferences that you've or are going through?
Are you saying that they're not as fun anymore, or they're more fun?
And
now?
more fun.
Okay,
Getting
well,
more fun.
I know people at conferences now, so it's more fun. I mean,
fair.
if you're going alone and you don't know anybody, it might be more tough. But like the Standard Celeration Society conference is my favorite conference. Sometimes it's not as many people, so it's more intimate, and everybody kind of knows everybody. Everybody's open to everybody and
Everyone's just
helping
giving
and
out
learning.
positive thoughts.
Exactly.
They're like, 1 minute now. I love you. I love you. I love you.
and they're really open and welcoming and engaging. Whereas like ABAI is so big, like where are you gonna go, who are you gonna talk to, and also if you have a lot of friends, who are you not going to be able to see? Because it's like, I want to see your talk, but I also want to see this other person's talk who I also know. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry I missed your talk. But then it's like, okay, well, where are you going tonight? Like, which bar are you heading out to? So then you get to hang out with them and all that stuff. And I know some people, it's like, well, I won't be able to make that 8 a.m. talk. Sorry. I went out last night, or I'm going out that night. So, I mean, I think it feels like it grows as you know more people. But I just feel like the bigger conferences probably it might be harder to find fun compared to the more smaller intimate conferences where
fair.
everybody's like taking time to meet people and to communicate with individuals.
One follow-up question, and then we'll kind of do a wrap-up. What would you like to see more of in the field?
Standardized measurement practices, cultural humility.
Yeah.
And I want us to really get out there and share the science of what we have. I mean, I think that ethically, morally, we should be all using the Standard Celeration Chart. I know that it can't be used for everything, but for most behavior that you want to measure and change across time, it will work. So that it's not going to happen immediately. But also the cultural humility, where we're able to kind of go into different spaces and learn, like you were talking about earlier in the Bahamas, where they weren't as food motivated, and you were like, okay, I'm thinking about this now. So should I bring food? Doesn't seem like I need to. What does their culture necessitate? What should their culture have? So I think that's also an important piece and aspect. And also, like, I feel like we need to meet people where they are. A lot of times people in academics or our science might say, oh, social media, it doesn't matter, it's for the birth. Everybody's on social media. So we should be sharing what we have on social media, not just articles where there's like a paywall or people can't access it, or they have to read a lot, or they might not understand how to actually critically engage with research because they haven't been taught. Making it readily accessible and free to everybody, that is something that I'm super passionate about. So I try to make all the stuff, and I want to make all the stuff that I publish free and open access.
Yes.
But I learned that it costs a lot. I had to pay a lot of money to get my one article that I'm first author in to be open access. And whatever number you're thinking, double it, triple it. It costs a lot
so much
on
more.
my end to make it free for everybody else.
Well, from somebody who goes online, looks up articles, and then it's like, you got to pay $10 for it. And I'm like, damn, well, I'm not reading that. Thank you for that, because there are going to be many people that get to contact your article and absorb what you're putting out there because of that. Because even in grad school, I was like, I'm not paying for that. I'm already paying all this money for grad school. So thank you.
And I think it's cool to see that behavior scientists like yourself are on social media and really taking that charge. I know Brett's floating around here somewhere, but when he really first started on this venture and was like, we're doing YouTube, we're doing Instagram, we're on TikTok now, he got a lot of backlash to start, and behavior analysts were like, what are you doing? Why are you on YouTube? That's a ridiculous concept. And now, here we are.
How wild. You can talk at a conference, but you can't talk online.
Yes.
Honestly, it's only a matter of time until this is the Super Bowl halftime show. It's just the whole presentation.
Imagine.
Yeah.
It cuts to commercial break, and then Jared's on a commercial. This is my Standard Celeration Chart.
So before we go, where can our listeners find you?
You can find me everywhere on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Jared Van Education, JaredVan Education. You could also go to my website, jaredvan.com. Jared like the diamond company, and Van like the thing that you drive or the shoes that you wear.
Love that.
And we'll put that all below as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Check out thekarmacollection.com for stylish, ABA-inspired apparel that spreads the message of behavior science with every wear. Free shipping on orders over $120. thekarmacollection.com